Auditel. This one's going to be how to decarbon your manufacturing of products, and it's going to be given by Paul Foster, who's a principal decarbonisation consultant at Auditel. But he's got 36 years of experience in the business systems, outsourcing communications, procurement and decarbonisation. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Alan. So how to halve your product carbon emissions. So if you look at decarbonising and rapid decarbonisation, you're looking really at buildings and products. So today it's very much about products, and it's easier than you think. So if you look at really, the whole carbon story, i.e. scope 1, 2 and 3, let's just highlight really for the sector that we're talking about, aerospace, what this means. So scope 1 is fuel combustion. It's operational and it accounts for something like about 10% of emissions. Scope 2, also operational emissions, but only represents 0.5% of the emissions profile. And so scopes 1 and 2 are relevant, but scope 3 is where all the emissions are. And so it's the manufacturing and it's the production of the fuels that matters, and that contributes something like about 89.5%. So it encompasses all the indirect emissions, and that's really where we're going to focus today. It's going to be about how we can decarbonise products. And this really includes emissions from manufacturing of aircraft parts, the supplier activity that feeds the manufacturing, so for example, metal production, the fuel production and refining, and the use of sold products, so the emissions that are generated by the aeroplanes they manufacture, and of course the use of those during flight. So even aerospace companies don't directly burn all the fuel. Their business activities really drive fuel consumption, but they're indirectly responsible for these emissions. So scope 3 is where we really need to focus. So focusing on disruptive innovation, let's look at scope 3 and where we can have some impact. I actually went around a show recently within the last few days, and I was asking one of my colleagues about progress in hydrogen and hybrid energy, I guess, for aircraft, and it was quite interesting to see some of that's moved on. But the key areas here are hydrogen, a promising alternative for fuel in the aerospace industry, electric and hybrid propulsion, and that seems to be coming along really well, and then the collaboration across the supply chain. And that's really where we want to focus today. It's about the products or the items that are made to feed that supply chain that eventually builds the aircraft and anything that's to do with that product. So sustainable sourcing is really what it's all about. The partners and suppliers who work together, and I think the aerospace sector is very much a sector where the supply chain is fragmented. There's a lot of outsourcing of products, and so it's very much a collaborative process that we need to work towards. And it's about decarbonising the materials, the processing and the manufacturing of those things. And it is a lot easier than you would imagine. It's about using recycled contents, and it's about using less energy and more renewable energy. So, and the standards are around to help do this. I mean, there's a standard within the supply chain used originally in construction, but it can be used in manufacturing, including aircraft, and that's the PAS 2080. And it's basically a circularity proposition that takes everything from the design and the sourcing through the build, through the use, and through the end of life. So the standards are there, and we can make this very transparent, which is essentially what we need to do. So embodied carbon, scope 3, poses a significant challenge. Well, maybe or maybe not. Operational efficiency is around optimizing the flights. So implementing flight path optimization. Software is key. Air traffic management improvements to reduce that unnecessary fuel burn during flight operations. One of the guys I'm working with at the moment still flies planes and has been involved in the industry for over 30 years, and he says a lot of waste is actually caused by basically not optimizing flight paths. The end of life management. I mean, this is a really big subject matter and huge in construction, and I suspect it will become huge in aircraft manufacturing as well. So what happens at the end of life? that process of decommissioning aircraft and recycling the waste from those aircraft have a huge impact on the environment. Policy and investment, so government incentives. We need to lobby government to get some of the incentives that people need, but there's enough already in the space that we're talking about around metals. For example, there's the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is a tax that the EU are bringing in 2026. The same is being brought into the UK. So taxes are starting to creep in. And then there's the public-private partnerships between different areas where they're accelerating innovation and overcoming some of the financial hurdles in developing these sustainable aviation solutions. So really what we're saying is that we need a multi-pronged approach. We need to focus on technology because that's improving all the time, but we really do need to focus on the supply chain. And increasingly, we need to move away from the linear supply chains of the past and start looking at designing products for the circular economy. I was talking to a designer only the other day where he said, you know, we used to design stuff so that it broke shortly after the guarantee. And so design is now for longevity and reuse and recycling and so on. So it's about operational efficiency as well. The supportive policies that you need around that supply chain will help you slash Scope 3 emissions. And it sounds like a really difficult thing to do, but let's go back to the 80-20 rule. If you focus on the main materials first, and a lot of the big suppliers are actually looking at those main areas of materials, so metals and stuff like that, follow the 80-20 rule, you can start having an impact very, very early on in that process. So operational carbon, how do we reduce that? Well, there's the direct emissions that come from Scope 1, so fossil fuels, that's all in process, that's all happening. You can optimize the resources that you are using within the production process itself, and invest in technologies such as renewables. So when you're buying material in and you're taking it into a factory, let's make sure that all the right criteria and all the right boxes are being ticked there so that you're buying a low carbon material, you're producing a low carbon widget that then goes into the supply chain, and that will satisfy your clients. Then there's all the indirect emissions. So, you know, the energy that you're buying, let's reduce what you're buying. Let's convert some of that into renewables. Let's improve energy efficiency. I mean, there's technology out there that can help you go down to machine level. So what machines, what equipment are you using to manufacture that product? We can actually go down to that level. Now, a lot of manufacturing facilities, not just in aerospace, but in every sector, has that energy built into the overhead. Well, what you need is more precision. You need to get into the data. You need to understand what machinery is using, what energy. How much does it cost to produce that widget? You need to work with the suppliers, and you need to work with consultants like ourselves because we can help you. We're looking at joining the dots and bringing various technologies together and using data and data analysis to help you make the right decisions. Then, of course, you don't need to get rid of all of that carbon in the first instance. You can look at ways of offsetting it. So carbon offsets in a business-to-business environment work really, really well. Everyone's got Scope 3s to deal with. And if you reduce the reporting to nil, in other words, if you make something like a carbon neutral product or a carbon neutral managed service, then that's a way of doing it. And you're offsetting, and as long as you're investing into the right offsetting schemes, and there are plenty of good ones out there, you are doing the right thing by everybody. So implementing a combination of all these strategies can help you decarbonize your operations, the material that you're buying. It is about collaboration, but by the way, if we get a low carbon product out the other end, we're all moving in the right way. The phone keeps ringing. So PAS 2080, the collaborative approach, PAS 2080 emphasizes collaboration throughout that supply chain. The construction industry use it in a big way. Manufacturing is starting to use it now. And it allows you to actually focus on that whole process and track what's going on within the decarbonisation. And in fact, the construction industry tell me that it helps them improve their efficiency. So the analysis and the focus on that whole supply chain piece works really well. So aligning regulations, I guess, PAS 2080 helps you. It's a valuable tool. It is best practice. and it will become an ISO standard in the very near future. If you want to find out a little bit more about all of this, please contact either the FAC or me directly. Contact details are available. Thanks for listening.